Hello, everyone. My name is Perrin Kennedy, and I serve as the Assistant Director of Volunteerism and Alumni Communities at the New School, and I'm delighted to welcome you to New School Alumni Presents Behind the Curtain, Building a Career in Live Entertainment. This series is designed to bring our alumni community together to connect with remarkable New School graduates who share their expertise on topics that inspire and empower. As part of a global network of over 90,000 alum spanning more than 130 countries, our community is filled with thinkers, innovators, and storytellers who are shaping a more just and equitable future across industries like design, fashion, education, nonprofits, and more. I encourage you to stay connected with this incredible network by joining the New School Network, which is our private platform exclusively for alumni. It's a great way to continue conversations, collaborate, and celebrate the impact of our alumni worldwide. Before we begin, a few quick house notes. First, this event is being recorded and will be shared with all people who have registered afterwards. Second, feel free to use the chat for general conversation. And if you have any questions for our presenter, please submit them using the Q&A function at any time during this event. Now, I'm very happy to introduce tonight's presenter, Nicole. Nicole is a dynamic producer and content creator with a degree in journalism and design and a minor in theater from Eugene Lang, the School of Liberal Arts. She has served as a talent director and production and talent coordinator for a number of amazing projects. And currently, Nicole is the creator of a platform that connects aspiring artists with industry professionals. And she also serves as the head of music at a management agency for artists and content creators. Nicole, it is such a pleasure to have you this evening. How are you doing?
I'm so happy to be here. It's always a good time having a conversation with my alma mater.
Amazing, amazing. Yes, I'm definitely glad that you're here. And I think this is a fascinating subject, careers in live entertainment. So why don't we just kind of jump into it here? I guess, let's start with kind of the early part of your journey. What drew you to the new school, and how did your educational journey at the new school kind of shape your perspective on storytelling and production?
For sure. So I came from a private high school where classes were very small. We had the IB program there, and it was very much seminar style. And so when I was picking a college, I was sure that I wanted to kind of find that same essence, like a small seminar style school, because I just, with my attention span, I just knew that if I was in like a huge lecture, I was just going to lose it. Um, but then also, I wanted to be in New York. I wanted somewhere that had like a history that resonated with my, just with my beliefs and just who I am as a person. So I feel like that was just when I started researching the new school, it felt like such a perfect fit. But I originally went there to study theater, and that was going to be my major. And my mom's a journalist, so I always say like I'm not gonna pursue journalism because that's like my mom's thing. Like I'm gonna be an actress. And I had so much fun like studying theater. And my minor was supposed to be culture and media, but they opened the journalism and design program my like at the end of my first year or beginning of my second. And I was like, I think that's what I actually want. Because I love the art of telling stories. I just felt like maybe I just didn't want to be at the forefront of that. Like maybe it wasn't my face that wanted to tell the story. And so I changed majors, and I just thought it was so amazing because it taught me to think about the idea first and then the medium second, because I was able to put the idea into so many different types of mediums where you think, oh, journalist, like she's probably like writing or she's probably on TV, but we got taught how to do podcasting, how to do photography and documentaries and data and and graphic design, and there was just so many ways that you could tell the story, and I think that has carried on through my career, where it's always about the story first, or like what is the story about and then how can we tell it best, and then also respecting the subject. I think I took the ethics class that they make you take in journalism. I really loved it, and I really carry it with me even as you do, as I did reality TV, which can be a little heartless sometimes. Like, how do we respect this person as much as possible and tell their story as truthfully as possible in the medium that we have at hand?
That's, such a great backstory to kind of hear. And I really loved, especially how you described of you wanted to go to a school that kind of aligned with your values as who you were, as who you are as a person. And then also how that degree in journalism, it kind of just shaped your perspective on storytelling. And it was like, how do I tell an authentic story, but also respect the subjects that I'm telling that story about? So I think that's really kind of great to hear that perspective. And I think it's how you tell the most authentic and organic stories possible. So, you go to the new school, you get this great education, and then you graduate. Tell us a little bit about your first major break into the live entertainment industry and how did you land that opportunity?
Well, I would say when I graduated, I had a job lined up in journalism, and I thought that's what was gonna happen for me. And I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, I don't have to go to school anymore, and like they're gonna like pay me well and whatever. And then it was a startup, and so it went broke, and it was just devastating. But it pushed me into the actual career that I wanted to pursue. So I produced a show in New York, in SOBs, and it was just all of these Dominican artists that we were able to bring. And it sold out, and it was just very like a confirmation that that was the direction that I wanted to go in. But then I came back home, and I feel like the first big break, which is just like the Got Talent franchise but DR. And it was the first time that it was brought here, and it was just such an honor. And I grew in that platform because I started out as a casting assistant, and then I ended up being a talent director, and I just love it so much. It was amazing.
I think a lot of us can kind of relate to that of you have to pivot at different points in your life. You kind of go in expecting one thing and then different opportunities and doors open up. And kind of when you look back, you're like, things happened exactly the way that they were supposed to happen. And I got exposed to all these great new things. So that's really cool to hear. And kind of speaking of just the diversity of the number of productions that you've kind of taken part in, how would you say you take your approach to managing production for such diverse content, like you do documentaries, reality shows? Like, how do you kind of manage that?
I feel like I definitely have a little bit of a niche, and maybe that helps because I truly love helping people pursue their dreams. So I work with a lot of emerging artists. And so a lot of the time when I work in documentaries, they seek me out for that purpose. Like, we're either doing something about an emerging artist, or they're looking for very specific talent that they wanna, have in the film. So I feel like that's definitely been very influential in all of the work that I do, regardless of same with reality TV. Like, Dominica's Got Talent was about that, just like showing emerging talent. And I feel like that's the line that kind of goes through all of my work.
Very nice, very nice. And I can really see just kind of the mindset that you kind of get in and how you answer the question of here's how I kind of manage the different things. And now you're like a pro at it. You're like, okay, I'm doing this project, I'm doing that project. Here's how I kind of go into it. So that's really awesome to hear. And kind of staying on this mindset of how you kind of approach work. How do you balance the creativity and the logistic aspects of production?
It's hard. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it's really hard because I feel like every project has its, its seasons, and sometimes it's time to be creative, and sometimes it's just time to get to, bring your little Excel sheet out and just get organized. And when those periods of getting organized and dealing with the, nitty and gritty get to be too long, sometimes I'm like, maybe I've lost my creativity. Like maybe it's just never gonna come back. Like it feels, sometimes I feel drained. And I was talking to one of my best friends about this, where like I feel that way on a Wednesday and then I go, I live in an island, so the beach is right nearby, and then we have just the most amazing all kind of ecosystems. So I'll go into nature for like 2 days and I'll come back and I'll be like, I have so many ideas. Like I feel so refreshed. And I feel like it's about that. It's about training your creativity, and getting to know yourself and knowing like what blocks of time are the best for you to be creative. When are you best to deal with the little Excel sheet and have the cells not blend into each other in your eyes. And then also knowing when you have to like take a day or retreat or not, or like maybe you can't take a day and maybe you could just take an hour or 30 minutes and walk through the park, but just refresh your mind, because I do feel like creativity is trained and you just can't wait. Like you can't sit down and wait for the muse to come. Like you need to know what are the tools that you have that help you get into that mood, even if it's just like waking up and looking at Pinterest for 5 minutes.
I truly love that. And I think that's so important, especially today in like a fast world of, things are happening like super quickly. You need to take some time for yourself to kind of reset, relax, and kind of get your head out of it. And I think that's important for being a balanced person. Kind of like how you were describing how you go out and get walks, or you will go to the beach, or you'll talk to your best friend. And so having that balance, I really admire that in how you've become self-aware to here's when I need a break, here's when I need to take my mind off of it. So that's really awesome to hear. You know, kind of looking at the current landscape of live entertainment, from what you've seen kind of doing your work of, helping emerging artists, what are some of the biggest barriers that emerging artists are facing, coming into the live entertainment industry?
I mean, it really depends on mostly where you're located, but I do feel that for any emerging artist, obviously money can be a a big impediment, a big barrier to getting your dreams across. But I also feel like there's so many ways to promote your music or your project in social media that don't necessarily depend on money, but they do depend on creativity. Um, but yeah, I think definitely just also balancing whatever your day job and your dream job are, and realizing what's your talent and what's actually your passion. I feel like that general struggle of, do I want to live off of this? Is it just my hobby? Is it something that I love, but can it bring me sustenance for the rest of my life? I definitely, it's a big thing. And then also, I feel like as you manage to get a career going and grow, if you are from a country like this one, like Dominican Republic, there's a lot of migratory issues that become big barriers, like not having a visa to certain countries, or what it costs to get a US visa or a visa to other countries just to be able to go and promote your music or play with other artists. Those are definitely big barriers that I would say that even though the internet brings us closer, you want to go play, or you want to go promote your movie, or you want to go show it at other places. You just want your art to be known, and it sucks. And I feel it in my heart because I deal with it all the time with the artists that I work with, to not be able to take that jump, or get that done.
And I think it's so interesting that some of the things that you brought up, especially about location, plays a big factor in terms of, some of the barriers. and then social media as well of, just these digital platforms. They're, elevating every day. And seems to be a new social media platform, TikTok, who knows what's going to be next, but they play such a big role in, is able to be seen. And, kind of looking at that, the rise of these digital media platforms, how do you see the future of live entertainment evolving in different spaces and different ways through technology? I would love your insight.
I think it's very interesting because during the pandemic and a little bit after, we all thought that, is the concert space or the live entertainment space going to die? Like, are people getting used to watching stuff on their TV or their phone? Because there were so many like live sessions and, little interview programs and whatever, that it was a genuine fear that it wasn't going to exist. And I do feel like people came out of the pandemic with an even greater desire to assemble and to go to festivals and to experience life in the outside because you don't know if that's ever going to happen again. Um, so I feel like on that side, we're pretty safe. And even we're seeing it evolve in other countries where you never had festivals before. Like Bhutan just had their first festival ever, or their first international artist, I think, to play. And we're seeing that also like touring is growing in India. Like places where people didn't used to tour are suddenly opening up doors. Like we just had here in Dominican Republic one of the biggest festivals we've ever had, and we had Incubus headlining, and that was a huge thing. So I think that's grown a lot. But I think in the digital space, we are seeing more and more tools for people to be able to connect with fans because now they have fans all over the world in all these places that they haven't necessarily visited because they're not able to have a world tour. But there's apps like, I don't know, there's this app called Join Sesh. And it's a lot of music artists use it and they have like little fan clubs. And this has always existed. Like we used to be on MySpace and then, everybody's on Bandcamp and you just migrate from platform to platform. But artists are constantly looking for the way to like, and even Instagram with their broadcast channels, looking for a way to connect with their fans even deeper. So I do think that that is definitely going to change. And I think also something that I really love is a project like the Sphere in Las Vegas, which the two, it joins the best of the tech advances that we've had and the live entertainment space, and suddenly you're able to have an experience like an immersive experience like never before. And I would love to see more of that as well.
As you were naming some of those apps, I was like, I'm just so far behind in understanding the app space. TikTok, I've never used it, and I'm like, I just need to catch up because there's so much going on these apps. And like you said, it's a great way for artists to be discovered. And that's really cool to hear that some countries that, haven't had international artists before or had as much tourism before, they're now starting to see that. Because I think definitely after the pandemic, people are looking for connections, things that bring them together. And concerts, live entertainment, that's one way to bring people together. It's a good way to celebrate and enjoy, some sort of shared connection of either an artist or, whatever is being performed or showcased. So that's really cool to hear and something that will definitely keep on evolving because we never know what's going to end up, being produced later in the year or next year. So very interesting, very interesting. You know, kind of going back to your work, in the breadth of everything that you do, are there any projects or initiatives you want to let the audience know about that you're just like really excited to have take off? And maybe even ideas that you've kind of been thinking about, like, oh, I wonder if this is good, and a little bit about your process of how you take a project from the beginning stages to the finished stage.
Yeah, right now there's a lot of newness going on, which is a little overwhelming but fun. Like we have um our major awards show here in DR that it's kind of like it's a mix of like the Oscar, the Grammys, and the Tonys like all in one. And we're having that next week. And I've worked with them before in the digital strategy, but it's my first time working as a producer on the carpet. So I'm really excited about that. And this is kind of, obviously I know the carpet because I've seen it so many times, but just working is going to be a different experience for me. I'm excited. I'm learning and I'm absorbing. I'm doing homework that I didn't have to do in the past of learning everyone and anyone who could possibly show up at the carpet and also just history of the carpet, things we can relate to. And I think that's very interesting and it's very fun and I'm excited. Um, and then one of my favorite big projects might be doing a comeback. I'm like, is anyone from DR in this so I can know if I can say it or I can't say it. But yeah, so the reality show that just gave me everything is about to make a comeback probably soon. And so gearing up for that feels surreal. It's a big process. It's just assembling a team and how do you assemble a team that can cast for anything and everything, that they can cast for musicians and dancers and actors and comedians and it's a challenge. And also how do you search like through an entire island of people, which I can't even imagine when they do like United States or like Britain's Got Talent, how crazy it must be, how many people must be on that team. But yeah, just looking for something that has never been seen before is quite a challenge that I'm excited to embark on again and see the same place that I've lived in now for a few years with fresh eyes.
That's so awesome. Congratulations on that opportunity. That really sounds huge. And I think that's kind of like a great networking opportunity as well. To just meet,
Yeah.
some talent that you already know, continuing to grow those connections, but then also meeting brand new talent, producers, people in the industry. And actually, before we get to kind of my last question here, before we go to audience questions, let me ask you kind of a follow-up question to this last question. Um, could you just quickly tell us about the role of networking kind of in your job? We know that networking is just such an important aspect to really any industry, but I'm sure in the live entertainment industry, networking plays a unique role in the sort of opportunities you get.
Yeah, no, 100%. I just want to disclaimer, I am actually a very introverted person. And so networking for me has been really hard on to be better at and kind of get little tips and tricks that kind of work for me when I'm in that space because I know it's so easy to get social anxiety even like when you go out and you're at this like big awards show, like I went to the billboards last year, the Lion billboards, and it's just a lot of pressure and you just have to put in your best face and go forward. And it's very important. And it's also a bit of a science. And I think the theater background helps me a lot because in my head, I'm like, okay, this is like a character. This is just like a character that I'm putting on. And it's me, but it's another version of me that's more extroverted. And I just kind of set my mind up and I just go into these spaces because for example, we had this festival here on Saturday, but there's 2 days of conferences that go before, there's networking events that go around it. So it's a very like exhausting 4 day period socializing. And it's extremely important because even if you don't get something in the moment, which is not what you should be aiming towards anyway, to like get an instant anything, the relationship that you form as time goes on and you feed that relationship because it's so important to like check back on those people and be like, hey, what are you up to now? Like, how's it going? Or like, Merry Christmas or whatever. It has really shaped my career. And I remember 3 years ago, 2022, I decided to go on a solo trip to Colombia because the music industry was booming so much in Bogota. Um, and I was just like, I'm just gonna network. I'm just gonna message people and say, hey, I'm from Dominican Republic. I'm here. I work in music, and I just want to have a beer with you or have a coffee and get to know you. And I was dying, but it was one of the most satisfying experiences, and just I learned so much from it. And obviously, I was like, at some points, I was frustrated. I was like, I can't network. I can't do this, and literally crying. And then I came back for a couple of conferences, and it's just I feel like it gets easier with time and you kind of know how to work your way around it. And one thing my therapist told me, and I'm just going to drop it here if it's useful for anybody, was look at the details in people, and it'll give you where to take the conversation. Like you look at someone, you're like, oh my God, what a nice shirt. Where is it from? I love that store. Or I actually buy shirts from blah, blah, blah. And you can start a whole conversation because a lot of time these people don't want to talk about their work. They just want to have a nice conversation. And that's a great way to make a first impression.
Oh, that is such good advice. I truly love that. People like to talk about themselves and not they don't necessarily always want to talk about work. They want to talk about their personal lives, what's happening, their hobbies, their favorite color, their favorite food. And so I think having a genuine, connection with somebody through talking about some of those shared interests like you were saying, I think that's such important to know and the have it be authentic and organic. And then also I really like the point that you kind of made of something you did of where you were just kind of putting yourself out there, even though it kind of made you a little bit nervous. You said you're kind of naturally introverted. You were like, I want to grow in this space. And so let me take a chance of putting myself out there. And, with that, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, but you didn't let that stop you from moving forward and finding the connections that did end up blooming. So that's really amazing to hear, and I think such important advice, really for any industry, but in the live entertainment industry, with things how things are constantly changing very quickly. I think that's very important. So good to hear. And then my last question for you, kind of here, kind of taking it back, as you think, just through your career up to now, from your journey from, starting in the Dominican Republic to the new school, what is some advice that you would really give your younger self looking back on that journey, that may be useful for some of our audience members?
Hmm. I mean, I feel like I'm pretty proud of all of the steps that I took because I feel like whether I liked them or I didn't like them or they were hard, I feel like they've had a good outcome for me. But I would say looking back, like the only advice I would give myself is it's literally not that deep. Because I feel like when you don't get hired for the thing that you want, or when you're in this like temporary job that you hate, or when your boss is not nice to you or whatever, it's not that deep. It's not gonna matter in a few weeks, in a few months. If you have like a goal, you're gonna get out of that job and excuse my language, but you're gonna get out of that job. You're gonna be someone's boss, or like you're not gonna work with that boss anymore. It's gonna pass. It will literally pass. But I feel like in the moment when you're there, you have to just make the best of it, learn what you can, plan your escape plan. Sorry, I'm repeating myself, but yeah, I feel like, and I to use an example, when I came to the new school, I took a job in the call center, and my job was literally calling alumni and asking them to donate to the school. And some people were very nice, and some people were not that nice. But I knew it was a temporary job. I had a goal. I was an international student, and you need to have an employment card to work. I knew that if I worked at the call center, I was going to be able to get the employment card, and then I was going to be authorized to work the next year for somebody else. And it was literally just, means to an end. So I feel like I learned so much though about talking to people and learning their stories and just convincing and how to convince people. And I feel you could do that at any job that you have, even if you don't love it. So yeah, just make the best of it and just know it's not that deep.
Oh, Nicole, you are just on fire with the good advice tonight. I think that was so awesome to kind of hear of you think about the long-term goal, and even when you're, are kind of living in the present, you think how is what I'm doing now useful for something that I want to do later down the line? What transferable skills can I pick up that I can take to the next thing that I want to do? And so I think that is such wonderful advice. But truly, thank you for answering all my questions. We do have some audience questions here. Let's see here. All right. So for our first question, we have, At what point would an artist contact you? Like at the beginning of their career? Do you have any insight on the first steps for someone who has never recorded a song professionally? Ooh, very good one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So there's a few ways that this kind of goes. Um, Sometimes people just want, me to have a session with them and I'll give them advice. They'll show me their project. Um, and I'll just, let them know kind of in an hour, 45 minutes where I think they should go. But I do feel like if you've never recorded a song professionally, like the first thing that you want to get really good at is your craft. Like you want to get an idea of who you are as an artist and just where you want to go, what you stand for, what that vibe is, so that when you sit down with someone, they're not kind of like putting their thoughts on you. It's you telling them, this is who I want to be, and them letting you know what the steps are to take. So yeah, so I love when people come to me with, their demo that they just made or whatever, because it helps me kind of give them a few steps. Whereas when they're like, I don't know who I am, and I'm like, well, I don't know either. Like I can give you this exercises so you sit down with yourself and you have like that conversation. But I would say, yeah, well, definitely when you have some work, it would be a good point for us to have a chat.
Awesome. Awesome. I think that's a good point of you got to kind of have somewhere that you're starting from of what is your voice? What do you want to, kind of sing about? What do you, want your music, taste to kind of be to then come with to you with some base ideas of this is what I would like to do. Great. We have another question here. Do you have any advice for someone who has no experience in the entertainment industry but wants to put their foot in the door? Okay.
Yeah. So be curious. Like that would be my first advice. Be super curious. I love watching interviews of people I admire. I love watching interviews of managers and producers, and I love watching interviews of artists because I feel like you learn so much behind the scenes, documentaries. Like there's so much out there if you don't like to, stereotypically take a book, or like you can listen to a podcast while you're on the subway or driving, which I do too all the time. And that's gonna give you a lot of information of who do you admire and whose steps do you want to follow in. And then it just depends on what kind of industry you want to go in. Like, or is it music or is it theater or um, I feel like learning from people's careers and spaces that you want to be in is gonna let you know, como kind of like, do I want to follow this route? Like, do I feel like I'm a musical theater actor or like a like a more like, traditional theater actor? Um, and then what did they do and what worked for them? And maybe they formed a collective with just a great way to get started, to have reference points.
I think that's really good advice, having those reference points of people like here's who I admire, here's what their work looks like, here's even their backstory, here's how they kind of worked their way up in the industry. So I think that's
Hmm.
really amazing. We have some more questions here. So this one, is your journalism professor still teaching the ethics course at the new school? If so, what is their name?
I don't know if he still teaches it, but at that time it was Andrew Meyer. And I love Andrew. He's so good.
I think ethics courses are really important. I've taken
Hmm.
some in my studies in my life, and I think it shows you how the work in the industry, morally and, look after people and, try to make the right decision. So I think that's such important, especially in like a journalism industry where you are interviewing people or you're covering stories about people's livelihood. So I think that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
I
Yeah.
know. And I think definitely in film, there was at least, I feel like in the film industry, there's a very like, if I say jump, you say how high kind of mentality. Like you have to do what you have to do. And when I started doing documentaries back home, we had a huge push by the government for people to make film. They were getting incentives. We were getting a lot of international investors and producers to make films here or whatever. Um, and I was doing casting for a documentary, and they were asking like, oh, we're going to their house and do this, or we're gonna ask them these questions, and I was like, no. Right. And they asked me like, where do you get off like saying no? Like, why do you think you could say no? That's not like a thing that we do here. Like, they tell you we're gonna do this and you say yes. And I was like, you know what the problem is? My job is to protect these people. Like, yes, I brought them here and they're gonna tell their story, but my job is to protect them because you're gonna go off with your film and I'm gonna have to talk to them forever. Like, I'm gonna have to live with that forever. So yeah, I think, and I wouldn't be able to do that if I hadn't learned that in class of like, yeah, a journalist can look at their editor and say, no, I'm not gonna tell you who my source is, or no, I'm gonna not gonna disclose that from their life.
Oh, that's great. That's like putting what you learned into practice. And though that the fact that those values were kind of, encouraged and amplified at the new school, I think it's just showcasing one of the many reasons why the new school is such a great place to go to, and to learn and to study and to grow. Um, Another question that we have here for you is I'm a social media content creator based in NYC. My online presence has grown pretty fast, and I want to start doing live events. Do you have any advice on how to get started as far as venues, ticket sales, etc.? Ooh.
Yeah. Um, I would say do a little market research. Like, why do people follow you? What's your niche? Why do you think people find you interesting? What do you share that, the data shows that people love and they share as well? Because you want to try to fill in spaces that either what you want to do is not being done, and so you're feeling a gap, supply and demand. Or you're supplying them with something that they really really like and they're going to follow regardless. So I would say that's the first thing, and then you go off to see, okay, where's like my fan base or the people who follow me or whatever, where are these people located? Are they Brooklyn people? Are they in, Washington Heights? Are they in the Lower East Side? Because you want to get a venue, if you post about Brooklyn every day, but then you get a venue in the Upper East Side, it could be super cool. It could be the coolest rooftop, but they're not going to go and it's going to be empty because maybe they don't want to take the subway into the Upper East Side. So I feel like just really getting to know your audience, what they like, what they're attracted to you, and then giving yourself time to promote your event really well, not only social media, but looking at who can I collab with, who would be interested in. Maybe I can bring somebody to speak at a panel, to DJ, to, somebody who has their own following, because you want to secure yourself from all sides. I'd say like being a little too ambitious in your first go can work against you, and it can actually discourage you really fast. So like if your following is growing pretty fast, you want to make events that are sold out. Like you want to make sure that you can do something that you can fill up, and then that's going to create a FOMO effect, and people are going to want to go to the next one and the next one.
I really like your point about, doing the market research of, before you spend money, you want to make sure that you have as much data as possible on what type of clientele am I trying to get out to these events so that you can really target to that demographic. And I think location is so important, especially like here in New York City, because it's covering so much space. You have subway lines that only go to particular areas. You may not have bus transportation in certain areas. And so thinking about the location, I think that's very critical. And there's some great advice, some great advice. Okay, let's see if we have any final questions here. Final call for questions. All right. Since I am not seeing anything, Nicole, why don't you go ahead and kind of give us a final word here?
For sure. I really like, I'm excited about the questions that we did take. I feel like they were really good questions. I just want everyone to know that if you want to have a chat, you can message me on social media or you can email me. My email is on my Instagram as well. I really enjoyed my time at school. I think it shaped everything that I do to this day. I learned, and I feel like a lot of it might be, basic knowledge sometimes to people who grew up in New York or like in similar cities. But to me, it was very enlightening, and the people that I met, it just really shaped the perspective that I work with. And something that I tell my team, especially in the live entertainment space, it's so important because we are an industry of service. We work for people to deliver things to people. I try to make every experience for the people who attend the show Disney. Like there is no, I went to Disney as an adult last year, and it is, they just take care of everything. And that's how I want people to experience being in a thing that I do, to have the best time ever and to just, it's my everyday job, but it's their special day. So if you want to work in the live entertainment industry, I would suggest you take a similar mentality. Like it's the most precious, privileged job you will ever have. So make people feel as special as it is to have this job.
Oh, that point was so great. I recently also visited Disney as an adult last year, having not been in so many years, and I was like, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
this was like a really fun, just how they take care of you and all the staff kind of, make sure that you're having a great time. So I think that was a great example to say you want your events and what you do to make people feel like they're at Disney. And we actually did get one more question here. The question is, do you work with any narrative filmmakers?
Um, yeah, I mean, I definitely, my strong suit is definitely documentaries, and within that, yeah, we work a lot of the narrative aspect. It's not like we're doing like reality documenting the office type of style kind of thing, but yeah, definitely.
Very nice, very nice. Well, Nicole, thank you so much today for just joining us. Audience members, like Nicole said, feel free to reach out to her if you have any additional questions that you may think of after this webinar. Something that I do want to say is if you are in the Dominican Republic like Nicole, we are planning a Dominican Republic New School alum get together. So, please be on the lookout for that, sign up to share your interest in being a part of something like that. It's on the New School Network, and then also an email was going around. So please look out for that if you're interested in that. But again, Nicole, thank you. And everyone, please have a great rest of your evening. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.